All right, guys, so I want to talk about this topic because I find it to be absolutely fascinating, okay? As I think this is a teachable moment where people have to learn the difference between conservative and libertarian. There's a lot of people who call themselves conservative, but they're actually really libertarian, right? And I think that people got to understand this because conservatives and libertarians tend to butt heads quite a bit, but they seem to kind of be seen as one and the same, even though they're actually really not, because of just how far gone the left is, right? People just don't like the left, so it's like, hey, you know what? These conservatives, these libertarians, let's throw them in the same box, even though they're not exactly the same thing. And I think this situation right here is kind of a perfect demonstration of what I'm talking about, as there's a whole lot of drama in the right-wing space involving Dave Rubin, who is gay.
They hate Dave Rubin because he's a gay man with the wrong opinion. Dave Rubin is gay? No! He got a husband?
He's just announced that he is having a baby or two babies, okay, with him and his husband. Now, this is controversial because Dave Rubin used to be a liberal. I believe he actually used to be a progressive leftist, okay, but he's moved over to the other side, and he now self-identifies as conservative.
So what at this point makes you a liberal, Bill Maher? I mean this, Bill Maher, if you're watching this, or your producers that watch my show, obviously. It's like, what makes you a liberal at this point? In effect, you're a conservative. As I have been saying forever, defending my liberal values is becoming a conservative position. If you care about free speech, which is what I think Bill cares about most, free speech and free expression, that used to be a liberal value. It is not anymore.
Okay, even though he is gay, he used to be on the left. You know, there's some things that he doesn't agree with the left on anymore, and he said that, hey, I am now conservative. And the way that he defines conservative is you're either woke or you're not woke. And if you're not woke, then you are conservative.
And in many ways, I would say, if you really want a dividing line of the day, as I said, it's not left, right anymore, you're either woke or you're conservative. Meaning, I don't mean conservative meaning a card-carrying member of the Republican Party and you have a picture of Mitch McConnell in the kitchen. What I mean is you're woke. You've either accepted the ideas of collectivism, you've accepted the ideas of state authoritarian power, and that we are all fundamentally racist, and it is our job to rejigger a society in a way that's going to fix that, or you believe that freedom is kind of messy, but it's the best thing we got, and let's run with that. And I would say that makes you a modern conservative. So I don't have a problem if someone says even though I wrote a book defending liberalism, it's over my shoulder, I don't have a problem if someone says I'm a conservative through that lens.
Yeah, so what he's describing there is not what I would define as modern day conservative. I would actually define that as a not woke libertarian. That's what I would define it as. And there's a lot of people out there that are not woke libertarians, right? People that believe in low taxes, minimum government, but you know, they're a little bit squishy when it comes to some of the social issues. They're not far left on the social agenda, but they might be left on the social agenda, or they're just not a leftist. They're actually really just liberals that agree with liberal economic issues and liberal social issues. They're just not super far left, which is what Bill Maher is. And that's why Bill Maher does not identify as a conservative, despite the fact that he's very, very, very critical of the left. But for whatever reason, Dave Rubin, who probably is very close to Bill Maher in regards to his political beliefs, he wants to identify as conservative. And I think that turns some more traditional conservatives off, okay? And the reason why is because a part of what conservatism is that there is a moral and religious aspect to it, right? There is an adherence to an idea that, hey, there is some universal morality, and that as a society, we need to try to adhere to this morality, even going as far as to construct government policies around morality, okay? And I think that's the biggest difference between a conservative and a libertarian is who's willing to use the government to enforce their morality and to what extent. Now, obviously, again, the world is not black and white, right? It's gray. On some things, I definitely think that we should use the government to enforce some type of morality, especially when it comes to children, when it comes to being against abortion, you know, things like that. And that's why I call myself conservative, because I'm not necessarily opposed to the government trying to enforce morality to a certain degree. Okay, but you know, some libertarians may say, hey, you know what, you can't legislate morality, and I also adhere to that as well too, to a certain extent, right? That's why I'm like, you know what, if people want to smoke weed or whatever, hey, that's on them. You know what I'm saying? I'm not necessarily gonna promote it. And just like when it comes to porn, right? I'm not for banning porn. There's a lot of conservatives out here that just want to flat out ban porn. I don't necessarily want to ban it, but I'm not gonna be out here promoting it. I'm not gonna tell people that it's a good thing and that they should be watching it and that they should sexually liberate themselves with it. I'm not gonna tell people that, because obviously I don't believe that. I think that it's definitely morally wrong. So yeah, I like to throw myself in the conservative bucket, even though I do have some libertarian leanings, because on certain issues I am actually okay with the government straight up being like, yeah, we need to legislate morality here, specifically when it comes to kids, comes to abortion, and when it comes to closing the border, right? Which, you know, there are libertarians that are like, no, we should have open borders. So for me personally, I think on certain issues, I am willing to legislate morality. And that's why I throw myself in the conservative bucket. But make no mistake, I'm not perfect. And I am, in fact, a sinner, just like everybody else, okay? You know, there are certain issues that I don't necessarily approve of morally, but I'm not going to sit here and call for it to be banned. But anyways, let's actually get into this video. But I had to set you guys up with kind of the context of what I'm talking about here so you guys can think about it in the right way. As again, Dave Rubin posted this picture here, and Mark Dice, who is a conservative, I believe, had an issue with it, right? He actually called out all of the conservative political commentators and talking heads on why in the world are they either congratulating this or not speaking out against it. So let's read here. Mark Dice says, "This is horrifying. Buying women's eggs and then renting other women's wombs to grow their children will be deprived of their mothers and instead forced to be raised by two gay men as theirs. Any Christian or conservative congratulating them is just as bad as the Marxists." Quote, "Why are the conservative leaders in the culture war all staying silent about this? I won't mention any names because there's just too many to list. What you up to these days? Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, Jesse B. Waters, Steven Crowder, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton. I thought we were protecting children and the nuclear family." So Mark Dice, I'm not gonna lie, he actually has a very good point here, right? He has a very good point because a lot of the videos that I do personally is about children, right? And the leftist agenda when it comes to trying to sexualize children and expose them to woke gender ideology, okay, that I think is damaging to this country. And a part of that is also talking about the nuclear family, which includes having a biological dad and a biological mother, okay, that take care of their kids and are married, right? I think that is important. I think that is the best way to raise a family in a society that is going to give the kids the best chance for success, okay? I think that is literally the formula that we should all be trying to promote. And I'm going to keep a whole buck with you. This ain't what Dave Rubin is promoting, right? He ain't promoting traditionally conservative values here. He's just not, okay? Two men raising kids that, you know, they basically got from a surrogate mother. That ain't traditionally conservative at all, okay? It's just not. It goes against basically everything that a lot of conservatives have been railing against in regards to the woke progressive agenda. Right? It is what it is. I got to call it like I see it. Right? Now, I don't necessarily agree with Mark Dice when it comes to saying this is as bad as the Marxists, because there's also an economical aspect to what the Marxists want as well, too, that I don't agree with. And I don't necessarily think that, you know, these people agree with it. But at the same time, it is something to be said when you have, you know, people who, you know, are in the conservative movement that are congratulating this. Right, that has previously spoke out against people on the left who do this. People like Pete Buttigieg, who has a husband who is gay, who got kids. I don't know if it's his adopted or they got a surrogate or whatever. Hey, they're doing the exact same thing. And conservatives have spoken out against that and said, hey, you know what? We don't necessarily agree with this. But you got companies like Blaze and PragerU that are congratulating this. Meghan McCain, Megyn Kelly, Ian Miles Chong. You got people that are in the conservative movement that are saying, hey, you know what? Congratulations, right? Congratulations. So with that being said, I definitely think that Mark has a point here, right? And I think the point he's trying to make is that, you know, you can't be out here railing against the left and their woke agenda, especially when it comes to children. But at the same time, you're congratulating what Dave Rubin is essentially promoting, which is something that the left would vehemently approve of, right? They would yas queen to Dave Rubin for him having children, right, with his husband. Okay, they'd be totally fine with that. In fact, they would promote that. They're totally fine with that, right? And this is something that, conservatives are supposed to be against. However, when it comes to somebody that self-identifies as a conservative, that, is cool with all the conservative figures, the conservative commentators, they're all friends, they're all in the same circle, you're congratulating it, right? Congratulating an activity that if it was somebody on the left, like Pete Buttigieg, when he put that out there, people condemned and said, hey, you know what? I don't necessarily think this is right. So, again, I think that's an interesting point because, again, it's one thing to be live and let live, and I definitely have a whole lot of that in me where I'm just like, I really don't give a damn about what other people do, right? I really don't, particularly if it's consensual and the only harm that's being done are to the people that are actually doing it, right? Okay, you do what you want to do, but I am not going to congratulate people for participating in behaviors that I see to be morally wrong or I just don't approve of, right? The same way I don't congratulate people who have kids out of wedlock, right? If a woman gets pregnant, okay, and she's not married, I'm not congratulating her on having a kid. I'm sorry. A lot of people don't like when I say that or like my opinion on that, but I just don't believe in congratulating behavior that I don't agree with, okay? Just like I don't congratulate people that go out here and buy brand new cars, all right? Stuff like that. I have a lot of pet peeves on things that I just don't like congratulating and rewarding bad behavior. I think there's enough of that in this society, right? I think there's a whole lot of that. And from a certain perspective, particularly if you are religious and you're Christian, congratulating Dave Rubin on this would be literally like congratulating something that your religion is against, right? Like you can't have it both ways just because the guy identifies as conservative. But there are a lot of people out here now that are identifying as conservative because they've been turned off from the left and they're joining the conservative movement, but they're also bringing in some of these more socially liberal values that, they still hold on to. And I think conservatives have to be aware that that is what is happening, okay? And you don't necessarily want to turn those people off because there is some common ground here. I think a lot of those people that are joining the right are being turned off by the woke left progressive social agenda, right? Like when it comes to children. So they may say, hey, you know what? I'm not okay with what the left is trying to push on kids, but if adults want to do what they want to do, it is what it is, right? And, again, there's a difference between saying, hey, do what you want to do versus promoting it, okay? And I think people got to understand that. What Dave Rubin is doing right now, and I think that's what turns off certain people, and I think that's why Mark Dice has a certain point here, is that he's promoting these behaviors. If he wants to have kids, hey, I don't necessarily approve of it, but I'm not going to necessarily stop him. I'm not going to say, hey, you can't have kids if you want to have kids, but hey, you ain't going to see me out here congratulating it, okay? And the fact that he's promoting it, I do think that is kind of a conflict of interest, a little bit hypocritical considering how, again, the right and conservatives are supposed to be against promoting this type of stuff. But here we are, somebody that called himself conservative, they're promoting it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is this, right? There is kind of a fine line that I try to walk when it comes to this stuff because, I do have my own moral positions. And I understand that, hey, I can't necessarily push my morality on everybody else. And I'm also not perfect, right? So that being said, that's why I'm like, okay, when it comes to certain issues that I think are fundamental that, hey, you know what, I can't, compromise on, hey, I'm a flat out conservative, right? For example, when it comes to kids, okay, and pushing stuff on them, when it comes to transgender issues that come to kids, when it comes to abortion, right? When it comes to also certain other issues that don't necessarily have to do with, morality per se, but are more political, like the border, I'm like, no, I won't close borders, right? When it comes to those type of issues, I'm like, I'm flat out conservative on this stuff, okay? But when it comes to some other issues that particularly involve adults doing what they want to do and not harming anybody and just doing what they want to do, hey, I lean libertarian on it. But the conservative in me, the moral perspective is one of those things where I'm never going to congratulate it. I'm never going to, if I ever had a personal conversation with Dave Rubin, I would say, hey, bro, I don't think this is right. If it came up and I wouldn't congratulate him for it and say, hey, I'm happy for you and all that other stuff, just like I wouldn't say I'm happy for a woman having kids out of wedlock. That's the way I look at it. Me personally. But again, I'm not trying to ban women from having kids out of wedlock. You see what I'm saying? That's just how I feel about it personally, right? So I thought this was an interesting subject to talk about. And I found it fascinating, the back and forth between people who probably should call themselves libertarians versus people who have a more traditionally conservative background going back and forth on this. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.